Hello. I'm back, by popular demand, with another handful of funny, obscure, fantastical, and freaky indie games, procured, of course, from the deepest reaches of Steam. Hopefully, you've never heard of these before, as discovering games like this is like exploring untrodden land, especially since a lot of these games have very, very little in the way of documentation. So, may I bring you new adventures. Today, we have an open-world bullet hell Noita-like, an ambitious RPG hybrid of Kenshi and Elin, and two whole traditional-style roguelikes. Caves of Cud? Nah, I'm playing Caves of Goon. Without further ado, let's check out the first game. Punk was a last-minute addition to this list, but it very quickly made the #1 spot, because holy moly was it a joy discovering this game. I heard about it from fellow YouTuber and roguelike enjoyer, Arima, who, after mentioning there was going to be spoilers, I went to check out the game for myself, and sank a good 13 hours into it. 13 hours doesn't seem like a lot for a game like this, especially since it's got a decent amount of content that you have to discover over many long runs. But this isn't the full game yet. This is a playtest. Probably the most full game-like playtest I've ever engaged in. It even says when you boot it up that the game is in a relatively early stage. But, I mean, if this is early stages, what sort of roguelike-infused crack are they brewing up for full release? The game takes the shape of this interesting blend of genres. It markets itself as an open-world bullet hell action roguelike, and yeah, that's what it is. Although this is probably the first open-world bullet hell I've played. In terms of games, it's like a mix of Noita and Gungeon. Noita for the open world, the environment, and the character/weapon building, and Gungeon for the bullet hell. You play as this little rocket-propelled ship, affected by gravity and with the burden of requiring fuel to move. You can fly about, hover, dash, boost, and of course, shoot. There are two ways you can die in this world: getting hit too much, or running out of fuel. Well, running out of fuel doesn't directly kill you, you just stop being able to move, and the game forces you to put a gun to the little guy's head and pull the trigger. There's no permanent items or perks, at the moment at least, and all the upgrades and weapons you buy or find can be swapped out, shuffled around, or stored away for later use. They all slot together on this huge grid, so long as they're connected to either a weapon, gadget, or your ship. Which, again, feels a lot like Noita and its wand building. I think this game also inherits the brutal trial and error difficulty from Noita. Knowledge is most certainly power here, and you have to figure everything, except the controls, out for yourself. I'm not going to go into where certain types of upgrades and weapons can spawn, and what biomes to look in for certain materials, because that's a good chunk of the fun. You just have to know that in this relatively early game, there is a vast world of loot and resources that I've yet to see the border of. What I will say though, is that this game feels fantastic to play. Think something like Risk of Rain 2. For me, it feels almost on par with that game's loop. Not quite there yet, but you know, I'll let it off. The weapons are very well made. Most, if not all of them, can be made viable with the right upgrades. Though some lean more into utility rather than raw damage dealers, which I think is pretty cool. There are two ways you can get new weapons: by opening these sea mine looking things, or by crafting them. To craft, you're going to need a bit of money, the most common resource, and whatever other material type that weapon needs. For weapons that use gel, you need fiber. For weapons that use caps, you need glands. These do come at another cost though. Unlike your starting weapons, and others like it, that just need stamina to use, the materials required to shoot these multicolored weapons don't regenerate by default. So, once you go out of your way to get a specific weapon or shield up and running with decent regen, it's incredibly rewarding. The sound design is another thing I commend this game for. Everything feels so tactile. The world is mostly fully destructible, but of course not in the way Noita's world is. On the surface, it's pretty simplistic, but I think the sound elevates it, and well, just listen to this and tell me it's not satisfying. The enemies all have unique sounds as well, which all fit really nicely. These guys with fluttery wings just sound like they do when aggroed. These ones that shoot bouncing projectiles sound like they shoot bouncing projectiles, even before you've seen the projectiles bounce. Okay, last glaze about the sound. The music, on its own, you know, isn't crazy. There's literally only one track at the moment, but most of the time it's not playing. There's just ambience. And then you'll be cooking up a masterful build. You've got most of the stuff you need, but there's just that one last thing you need to find. And then this banger will start playing, and holy moly, these devs know how to make the most out of what they've got. My final thoughts? For a playtest, it's insane. I'm starting to see the limits of content after almost 20 hours, though I'm still not sure if I've actually beaten any of the final bosses yet. There are these advanced encounters, but I'm not entirely sold that they are the most powerful enemies this game has to offer. I can't wait to see where this game goes. Like it said at the start, this is supposedly relatively early for this game. Some things I'd like to see though, as this game grows. I would maybe like to see some more stuff in the world. More points of interest would be cool. Don't get me wrong, it's already fun to explore, but it can get a little repetitive. Also, some of the upgrades feel a lot more useful than others. When I open a crate and get a white add explosion, or an increase in a resource, it sparks joy. When I get literally any upgrade that requires a material to work, like add burn, I toss it in the vault and forget about it. Maybe I just wasn't using these right, but they just didn't feel viable compared to stacking 5 extra projectiles on the weapon and calling it a day. Other than that, I just want more of what this game's got, and I highly recommend you check out the playtest, if it's still available. This game found me, like a lot of these games do, waist deep in the pits of SteamDB. Cross the World, at first, seemed like any other 2D indie fantasy game. I will be honest, the pixel art didn't exactly draw me in. But watching the trailer, it was clear there was more depth to this game, as I first assumed. To cut a long story short, I ended up getting the game. And I have to say, it is quite ambitious. It's like a soup, comprised of parts of popular open-world survival RPGs. Think Kenshi, Elin, RimWorld. Hell, I'd say it's even got a pinch of Zomboid in there. And it takes place in a non-procedural, but very large, persistent world. I will say now though, it is early access, and it very much feels like it. But let me give the positives first. I would say it fits nicely with other RPGs like it. It's got the crafting, it's got the squad-based gameplay, with the ability to get different characters to do different tasks. It's even got base building, although I haven't got around to trying this out yet. The character creation is simple, but I like it. You can have a squad, but each member will cost creation points, which are also used for perks and optional starting gear. Or you can go in solo with all the perks and gear you should want. I'd say the actual character leveling is a lot more fleshed out, and is more on par with a game like Elin. You got a decent range of skills to train, and leveling up gives access to more perks, specific for that character's class. Minor correction, some of the perks don't have strict class requirements, and can be unlocked as soon as you get a perk point. Also, I did find a book that said it would teach me the basics of shamanism, a perk that my dwarf knight couldn't even get anyway, because he's not a shaman. And even if you are a shaman, you start with this perk. So, I don't know. I'm sure you can get perks this way, if you have the right book, but this one just seems like an odd one to have. For example, the druid can become half plant and gain the ability to photosynthesize, allowing them to no longer require food, but you should probably keep them outside. There's not a huge amount of perks for each class, and most get locked off depending on which class you pick. Like, magic classes are locked off from pretty much all combat and weaponry perks. But what's already here is great, and I feel like it's something that we'll get more of as the game progresses in development. Now, I do believe that this game can be really, really good, but it does have some things, at the moment, I think will turn off new players and people wanting an experience akin to the games it's competing with. I also want to be clear that I'm not hating on the game, and these are just some things I think could make the game better, because I think it has potential. The first thing that had me tripping up was the controls. They're not horrible, but did take a bit of getting used to. They felt kind of clunky. For example, right away you're given 2 different ways to move the selected character, either by right-clicking or with WASD. In this mode, you can rally your other squad members to follow the one you have control over. But then you have the option to unlock the camera with Ctrl-C and have the more traditional way of navigating by drag selecting the characters and telling them where to go, like Kenshi. I just feel like it should lean more into one or the other. Either have your player control the characters like Kenshi or like Elin, and refine it to work with the rest of the game. You could have, for example, the free cam as an option only for looking around, and have all the movement handled by the player controlling one character, rallying the others. Or just have the Kenshi-like movement. Upon further reflection, and a few more hours with the game, I can see why you'd want these 2 different types of moving. With WASD, it does feel like you have more fine control over a character, and I can see the unlocked camera mode being useful for large party sizes. But still, my first impressions were that of confusion and getting tangled in this web of controls. I think it might just be a communication thing. They don't feel very intuitive. Another example of this is the game speed-up controls. Looking at prior versions of the game, these buttons at the bottom were used to speed up the game. Now, one is pause, one is play at 1 time speed, one is open inventory, and one is task mode. To speed up the game further, you have to press F10 and F11. The second option is that you can set a character to auto mode, which I believe makes them automatically do tasks, but this is immediately turned off as soon as you start moving the character with the direction keys. Just seems like if you're not controlling a character, it should be a given that your other guys are going to get on with stuff. Again, drawing from Kenshi, the jobs menu, it would be nice to have something similar in this game. The last two things I want to mention, and this is more just a heads up, because I think this will get resolved with time. The world is very big, which is fine, but I think it does need populating a bit more, as it's mostly trees at the moment. And please, can we have more granular control over the difficulty options? Like, what if I don't want permadeath, but want the monster population to be normal? I feel like all the options here should be toggleable, rather than just having two presets. Obviously, all that I've outlined here could be changed in future updates. I have faith that the dev knows what he's doing, and that the game is actively being worked on. I could moan and nitpick at this game further, but I feel like that would be like eating the dough before it becomes bread, and complaining that it tastes bad. Now, that aside, one little trick to get a good start: get yourself a band of dwarves with good melee classes, and raid any houses you come across in the starting area, Coast Ridge. Everyone will hate you, but there's literally the entire rest of the world to be friends with, so better to make use of the good combat XP. This game has some crazy potential, and I'd love to see it grow. I would also understand that people might want to hold off until it's more polished. Either way, you should for sure check it out, and give it a wishlist, if it looks like something you would enjoy. It already has multiplayer and modding support, which, in my opinion, are two insanely important things for the longevity of a game. I didn't think I was ever going to get caught off guard by a game that's graphics are solely comprised of ASCII characters, but I guess there's a first time for everything. Monster Lily, at its core, is a modern, but pretty close to rogue, traditional roguelike. Given this factor, the game is item-based, meaning, as opposed to other roguelikes, where you gain power from leveling skills, here, how powerful you are completely depends on what junk you picked up on your travels. Several people have said in this game's reviews that it's similar to Brogue, but having never played it, I cannot confirm. This also means that the game is brutally difficult, and requires tactical use of whatever you have available, which sometimes is your natural bodily functions. I was questioning whether or not to show this, but fuck it, it's literally text. YouTube, listen, I was making a spreadsheet and I sneezed, and it just messed up the whole thing. Let's get the setting out of the way. It's certainly unique. Maybe it'll turn some people off. Well, it'll certainly turn some people on, that's for sure. But I think it shakes up the genre a bit, you know? And you might get some laughs out of it, depending on whether or not you find words like penis, piss, pecker, and footer entertaining. This aside, under all the horny, there is actually a very well-made roguelike. The UI is sleek, the controls are surprisingly easy to get the hang of, and it being item-based means the game is easy to learn, but hard to master. I thought the leveling was interesting as well. Basically, your level, increased with melon seeds, determines what items you can use, rated by how confident you are. You either have to have the level requirement, or enchant that item to bring the requirement down. To my knowledge, leveling only affects what items you can use, and nothing else. You can increase your max health with life seeds, but it's better to save and use these when you need to, because they also heal you on use. Honestly, it's a well-made roguelike. It's got a good atmosphere, and even though it's random, dying is most of the time your fault, which is not a bad thing. This is how roguelikes should be. My final piece of advice? Stay the hell away from slime girls. Another item-based roguelike you've probably not heard of, Theralite, is a sci-fi themed roguelike revolving around the collection and trading of crystals. I would say, out of the roguelikes I've played, this one is for sure on the more accessible side. You can go in with just a bit of caution and fairly soon find yourself blasting mine goblins with pieces of sci-fi tech. I mean, the game does just hand you a gun at the start. There's nothing wrong with a game like this being more lenient. I gave some examples of games in a video I did about traditional roguelikes that are good for people that want to dip their toes into the genre without getting overwhelmed with insane control schemes and steep learning curves. And this game would fit right in. Your goal is to escape the mining facility, after some event caused you and a whole bunch of other people to be trapped inside. It gives you some freedom to work out what you have to do, rather than straight up telling you, which I appreciate, and then you have to go out and explore the overrun facility. Like I said, the game revolves around collecting crystals, used to trade for items from vendors found throughout the caves. You can find items in crates, but these are few and far between, and aren't guaranteed to drop what you need. So, mining for gems is pretty much a requirement. This does come at a cost though. That being, the more you mine in the level, the more enemies that pile in to see what all the noise is about. There is no cap on how many enemies can spawn from this, which I thought was quite entertaining. So sure, you can live out your dwarven fantasy, just don't expect to leave the level after you're done. I know this game's not early access or anything, but a couple of things I would maybe like to see changed and added. In the shop, the amount something costs is displayed in plain text, which would be fine if you didn't have to hover over items to see what they are. Meaning, it's hard to tell at a glance what an item costs, especially since when starting out, as you have no idea what the different sized gems look like. Simply having the sprite show, with a number indicating the amount, I think would be a better way of displaying the cost. A minor addition, as well, could be the option to only start with a pickaxe, as a sort of light difficulty option. Or you could even start with nothing. I mean, sure, you can just not pick up the items at the start, but it feels more legit to talk an option or something before the run starts. All in all though, it's a pretty solid roguelike. And again, I can recommend it to anyone looking for one that's more accessible. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found some games that at least piqued your interest. A huge thank you to the one guy who became a channel member off the back of my last video. Your support is very welcome. As always, more videos to come, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. I need fuel. Oh no, it's this fucking guy again. What is going on? I'm just sinking. Oh, there's a station thing. Station.
I think the deeper you go, the more it gets. Way.
Nah, what do you mean? This is so safe, bro.